And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited. There's a clear cause and effect here that is as neat and predictable as a law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
The Liberty Podcast is brought to you by Proven Arms and Outfitters, specializing in rifles, pistols, tactical gear, and more. Learn more at ProvenOutfitters.com.
Hey, welcome back to the Liberty Podcast. It is the 22nd day of August, 2024. We're so glad you found us once again here on this sun-drenched, beautiful day in the pines, amid the pines. As always, we are brought to you by Proven Arms and Outfitters. Those folks have everything you need to act as a responsible American citizen protected by the Second Amendment. ProvenOutfitters.com. Well, folks, I visited my physician this week, and the blood work came back, my annual blood work. They take about half of it out of me, and they run it through all these different devices, and they come back with a complete overview of the state of my health, which, unlike the union, is strong, or so I'm told by my physician. That means that unless I am taken out by a Marxist Democrat sniper, I will probably live to see 2025. I'm not sure I want to on days like those of the recent past, as we've been watching this horrendous Democrat National Convention roll out in Sodom and Gomorrah by the lake, formerly known as Chicago. No longer that toddling town, it's now more of a maudlin town, I guess you would say. This week, it's pretty good for the folks who have to be there, whether they live there or they're attending the convention, because there's so much security lining the streets that you would really barely be able to get away with jaywalking, let alone, some nefarious violent act. Although those will go right back to becoming the norm as soon as the circus leaves town tomorrow. But here we are, a mere 55 days by the time you see this, 55 days from the start of early voting, which is October 17 in Moore County, and about 74 days until the big one, D-Day, Election Day, November 5, 2024, the most important election day of our lifetime, arguably. Hopefully it will be an election day conducted under very close scrutiny so that the left can't put its little flying monkeys to work, obfuscating the outcome of the people, desired by the people by virtue of their casting of votes, one at a time, legally, with an L. Wouldn't that be glorious? Well, folks, despite the fact that there are a lot of images that we like to turn away from normally that we see on our television screens and our computer screens and on our phones, there was a glorious one that passed before our eyes this week when Donald Trump's gorgeous 757 aircraft did a low pass over the beautiful Asheboro grounds where he would ultimately be addressing the assembled throngs outside of the Aviation Museum in Asheboro, North Carolina. Not far from here, just up the road, Interstate 74, maybe 40 minutes north. And it was a glorious day, a lower humidity day for a change. And boy, is that 757 a thing to behold. I'd rather see that any day than a flyover of fighter jets, to be honest with you. It was something else. And that was the segue into the big rally in Asheboro, with many more to come. But mostly people have been focusing to their detriment, I would argue, on the Democrat National Convention. Of course, the lefties are filling the halls of the United Center, a very odd venue for a group of people who seek not to unify, but to divide our country straight down racial and ideological and gender lines, for sure. But they're in the United Center. That's a woke airline, by the way, that sponsors that building, has for decades now, I think. It's Chicago's hometown airline. It's Chicago's woke hometown airline. So maybe it is a fitting place for the DNC to carry out their satanic worship and animal sacrificing this week on national television. You know, it's interesting. They've trotted out all their celebrities, and these people, we're talking about Oprah Winfrey and Michelle Obama and Barack H. Obama. They even brought out doddering Bill Clinton, who has to be getting nervous about being reunited with Jeffrey Epstein here in the very special little sauna, the eternal sauna that they are destined for. But they bring these people out and they read their beautifully scripted lines and they try to express empathy toward the masses. They try to claim that they are all, but for the grace of God, victims of racism, that they just got by the skin of their teeth, or else they'd be out there the same victims as all of you suckers, I mean voters, in the audience and watching on television across the fruited plain. And, it's really an interesting contrast. At the RNC convention, we like to hear from intelligent people, successful people who have actually had an impact on the world around them. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and Tucker Carlson and Franklin Graham and his wonderful organization, Samaritan's Purse. We get to hear from Oprah Winfrey. Now, I know she's made a lot of money. Of course she has. So have Barack and Michelle. But what have they done, actually? What have they done ever to impact the very people who they claim should be following formerly the Biden-Harris regime, and now this Harris-Walz clown show? We can't wait to look on. By the time you watch this, Kamala will have come out and shared her very well-orchestrated word salad with us. I think it'll probably be a typical tossed amalgamation of all kinds of shallow promises and empty allegations against Donald Trump and more than 75, call it 80 million voters who they are more than happy to alienate every chance they get. But it's really interesting if you have the intelligence and the inclination to turn away from this completely bought and paid for fake corporate media and actually see what's going on in and around Chicago as this convention has played out. It's really quite interesting. Many of you may tune into the Chris Plant Show. He's one of the shining lights of conservative talk radio. He's on usually in the mornings in the 9 o'clock to noon hour, both here in this market and all across the country out of the Washington, D.C. WMAL flagship station. Well, he happened to take a caller, I believe it was on August 21st during his show, and he takes callers from all over the country because it is a nationally syndicated program, even though it's based in D.C. And it was Joyce calling from Houston, Texas.
Joyce, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Thank you, Chris. First, let me say, I am a 91-year-old black American, and I said black. I'm not African American. I've never been to Africa. But I want to talk about the joy that I saw in my community and heard on the radio of Obama. Our Obama is going to speak tonight.
And then she proceeded to talk about the hypocrisy that the black community has endured, going all the way back to the day that Barack Obama spoke at a convention. I think that was 2004, his sort of breakout speech that year when Boltneck John Kerry was running president against George W. Bush. And then, of course, his inevitable nomination and election in 2008. And Joyce from Houston talked about how they've all been sort of, willfully lining up at the Kool-Aid trough ever since. And it was quite enlightening, in contrast to what we're hearing from all of these talking heads out of the DNC convention in Chicago. Here's what she says. Chris Plant asked her, so you feel like you've been lied to? Well, by who exactly? Who's been lying? And Joyce says, you could just hear lies all around. And let me just say this. I want to say this. When Obama came to the White House, it was said, we were so rejoicing in the black community. Oh, we have a black man in the White House. I said, but what we need is a black man in the Black House. Interesting metaphor. Because if we had that, meaning the black household, the black nuclear family, we wouldn't have all this crime in our neighborhoods. All these young black men wouldn't be in prison today if they had black men in the Black House. And we were so rejoiced about that. And our neighborhoods are war zones today, Chris. We are living in terrible conditions in our neighborhoods, and we are rejoicing about Obama. We can't get garbage picked up, and we are rejoicing. We go to the store, and we are rejoicing because a black man was in the White House. And I don't know what it's going to take for us to wake up. And especially we are still in the hood, where we are locked in and we are scared to go outside. But we are rejoicing because the Democrats have been promising us for 80, 90 years, yet we are still in the ghetto. And especially it's time for my people to wake up. And let me tell you, if you're an educated person, you will never be enslaved. So become educated to what's going on. And I said before many times, Chris, Democrats don't like black folk. They like black folk. And I want to say this to the black community. We are prostitutes in reverse. We are being screwed and we are paying. We are paying at the pump. We are paying at the schools. Our children are graduating and they can't even read their diploma. And we are rejoicing. I mean, that really takes your breath away, doesn't it? A 91-year-old woman, very articulate, and she's ticked off. She's not enjoying her golden years. She's making a clarion call to her black community in Houston and around the country. Wake up, she's saying. And Chris Plant was very taken by her words, and I want to play a little sound capturing what he had to say in reaction to Joyce from Houston. Let's take a listen to that.
I'm so glad you found my humble radio show too, and I'm glad that I found you now, and that's you've made my morning. Honestly, you're wonderful.
Joyce from Houston. Boy, if the Democrats actually heeded her words and woke up, they'd be scared to death because there's a lot of people like her out there, and they're not voting for Kamala and Tubby Timmy Walls and all these other Marxists who are lining up begging for their votes. Another alternative media source, the Benny Johnson Show, I've mentioned it before in connection with his excellent reporting from the Butler, Pennsylvania Trump assassination venue from mid-July, over a month ago now, believe it or not. Benny Johnson has been in Chicago all week with his really world-class podcast. And again, he knows he's not going to get the straight story by hanging around the convention center, the United Center in Chicago. So earlier this week, he went out into the streets, the south side of Chicago streets. These are the streets where the folks are truly living in the shadows and have been under Democrat rule in that city for generations, going back to the Richard Daley machine of the 1960s and 70s, and all the way up through current times. Now they've got this Brandon Johnson, mayor, I think his name is, who is such a lunatic, and the only thing he's got going for him, apparently right now, is the color of his skin, which is black. But the people of Chicago have got to be waking up to this guy. what a train wreck. He's just another Democrat mayor ruining another once glorious city. So Benny Johnson goes out onto the streets, and boy, he he encountered some guys. These are people who are living in the shadows, but they seem to have this this awareness. They're not waiting around for politicians to tell them what to think or how to think. And what did he discover almost without exception? Man after man, woman after woman on these streets. There's a Trump tsunami building in these lower class. I won't even call them working class. These are neighborhoods that the left has ground their iron boot into, where there is very little in terms of jobs. There's just existence. There's just government programs and checks in the mail, and that's about it. And these folks don't want that. They want Trump. They want the hope of a prosperous America. His interviews are fascinating, and some of the little kids, the little fellas saying, "I want to vote for Trump too," and they're not even old enough to drive a car. It was very uplifting. Let's listen in. Let's take a peek at a few of the great sound bites from the Benny Johnson program.
I vote for Trump. I go for Donald Trump. Me too. I go for Trump.
Who are you voting for in 2024?
Trump too.
And why is that, ma'am?
He the best president ever.
Has Barack Obama done anything for around here and these?
He never did anything since he been in office.
Yeah.
And I'm glad he out. Trump the best.
Barack Obama? Man, I ain't got no message to him. I don't mess with Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm a Trump supporter. Trump do more for black people and care more about black people. And Barack Obama ain't black. Just to let that be known.
All right.
I'm a Trump supporter, man. We gonna keep this going. Trump, he a real businessman. I'm a real Republican, man. I want Trump back in office second term.
What would be your message to Barack Obama?
I don't know, pump some money in here. Pump some money like Trump, you know?
Your message to Donald Trump?
Come on, man, get us to the Super Bowl, bro. Make America great, man. That's all I can say. Make America great.
Trump or Kamala Harris?
Oh, God, it's Kamala, definitely.
Yes?
1,000%.
Yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. What's your favorite thing Kamala's done in the last 4 years?
Honestly?
Yeah.
Actually, don't use this.
Someone is like pro-American,
yeah.
And if you're American, you should be pro-American. I guess you know who I support.
Trump. Trump, right in downtown Chicago.
I'm not trying to put that out there.
Yeah.
But again, yeah. Again, I feel like whoever is going to be president of the United States should be someone's pro-American, economy for the United States, and protecting the borders. Yeah. And by the way, I'm not American, but America first.
Really?
Yeah.
Where are you from?
I'm Nigerian.
Nigerian?
Yeah.
Chicago. I lived in its suburbs for far too many years, and the few friends I have who are still there, they avoid all aspects of Chicago, the financial district, even the beautiful Gold Coast, just north of the city. They take no chances. They stay in their suburban bubbles every chance they get. Well, so I have to give credit. The Republicans in the House have stayed the course on pursuing the corruption of the Biden crime family. Unfortunately, they didn't get around to really unleashing the final report of their investigation until, first of all, after Biden had dropped out as the candidate for re-election for president, and for all intents and purposes has now dropped out as president of the United States. We all know that he's really not running anything except his mouth and probably running to the bathroom quite frequently as well. But, the other thing I have to say is, guys, Republicans in the House, you release this the week of the Democrat National Convention when all the air is sucked out of the room by this primetime love fest, which is really a lie fest. I think I would have waited a week on this thing, but here it comes. The House Oversight, Ways and Means, and Judiciary Committees combined brought their nearly year-long impeachment probe of President Biden to an end Monday, August 19th, concluding that the Democrat who unwittingly made Kamala Harris's second presidential bid possible, they've concluded that Biden has engaged in egregious and impeachable offenses. No kidding. According to the investigators' nearly 300-page report, overwhelming evidence demonstrates that Biden participated in a conspiracy to monetize his office of public trust to enrich his family. Well, we've only been saying this going back to when he was running in 2020. Bank records reportedly show, I don't know why the Blaze.com, which is reporting this, has to say reportedly. They've got the goods. Bank records show that when accounting also for the Biden family business associates and their companies which don't really produce goods or services, the international influence peddling schemes totaled over $27 million from foreign sources from 2014. Let's see, who was vice president then? Oh yeah, Joe Biden. From 2014 to 2023, just into last year. Contrary to the repeated suggestion by Biden and boosters that he had no hand in his son's shady dealings, the report maintains that Biden knowingly participated in this conspiracy and that it is inconceivable that President Biden did not understand that he was taking part in an effort to enrich his family by abusing his office of public trust. The report indicates that Biden put no such distance between himself and Hunter's deals. And these aren't deals like, okay, how much will you pay for my consulting, my brilliant insights? Or how much will you pay for a tangible service or a product? These deals were nothing more than extortion of money from one entity into the Biden crime family. That's it. No distance existed, and that some of the proceeds from the influence peddling scheme indeed went to Joe Biden. Among the funds from the scheme that ended up in Joe Biden's bank accounts, hundreds of thousands of dollars were allegedly directly traceable to China. The report separately accuses Biden of using his, quote, official position to conceal his mishandling of classified information as a private citizen, end quote. You remember that. They totally punted on condemning Biden's illegal handling of classified docs after he left the vice presidency. Meanwhile, they were raiding Mar-a-Lago and sorting through Melania's lingerie looking for documents. But no, the report underscored that Joe Biden has exhibited conduct and taken actions that the founders sought to guard against, our founding fathers, in drafting the impeachment provisions in the Constitution, including abuse of power, foreign entanglements, corruption, and obstruction of investigations into these same matters. Says Representative James Comer from Kentucky, chairman of the House Oversight Committee, the evidence produced by our impeachment inquiry is the strongest case for impeachment of a sitting president the House of Representatives has ever investigated. We have exposed the truth. House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan, Republican, Ohio. The facts speak for themselves, says Jordan, and Democrats can no longer stretch the truth to cover for President Biden. As Democrats celebrate Joe Biden and crown Kamala Harris as his heir apparent this week, Americans should remember the reality of the Biden-Harris administration: crime, chaos, and corruption. The 3 C's. The vitamin C's of corruption: crime, chaos, and corruption. None of that, by the way, will come up in any kind of network reporting from Chicago or from their ivory towers this week. I just hope that the Republicans on these committees And the conservative media will re-stoke the embers under this investigation as soon as we get into next week and this DNC convention is behind us, because this needs to be repeated over and over again. This is a legitimate investigation based on 300 pages of reportage, and it cannot just die with the next news cycle. This is too important. Too important. Here's another thing that's important and shouldn't die with the next news cycle. More deceit and corruption right in our faces. The economic comeback that the Biden regime has been talking about since he waltzed into the White House in 2021. Well, guess what? It was built on deception. A downward revision of 818,000 jobs by the Bureau of Labor Statistics was announced earlier this week. I believe it was on Wednesday, August 20th. A downward revision of over 800,000 jobs that didn't exist. The revision was not unexpected. This happens periodically, but to this degree, unheard of. And it's worse than usual. Why were the numbers so inaccurate, you might ask? Well, maybe it was to make the economic recovery look better than it actually was. Or was it something even more nefarious? Now that job growth has been revised dramatically downward, the Federal Reserve can contemplate an interest rate cut in September, even as early voting is getting underway. Is the Fed juicing the economy to help drag Kamala and Tubby Timmy across the finish line? Huh. Do you think? By the way, all of this revisionism has been ignored right off the bat. No kidding around by the mainstream media. Are you surprised? Here you go. ABC World News Tonight, according to Media Research Center, a great organization. ABC World News Tonight was the sole network newscast to report on the Bureau's massive downward revision of reported jobs. David Muir, the anchor, the heir to the throne of the great Peter Jennings, said Muir, now to the economy tonight. Newly revised jobs data showing the jobs market hasn't been as hot as it seemed. This puts more pressure on the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates, potentially by 0.5 percentage point next month, which could, of course, lower car loans, mortgages, and credit card rates. So they gave it 19 seconds, and they were really interested in only doing one thing, setting the table for an interest rate cut, which could suddenly lower some prices and mortgage rates. And do you think that'll sway some votes? Well, the Federal Reserve is sure as hell hoping so. Forget about the Fed as a neutral body. And so when the left is screaming because Donald Trump says that the presidency needs to be more interactive with the Fed, I think he's onto something, isn't he? CBS and NBC were nowhere to be found on this story, as you might imagine. In addition to that, over in United Center Hall, where the convention is going on, you've got this hilarious scenario where they did bring on, to kick off the evening's coverage, the Biden Commerce Secretary. Her name is Gina Raimondo. And before I get to her little beautiful gem of deception, I need to take a gulp of hydration. Because when you do a lot of talking, you need to keep the hydration flowing. It's a little of what I like to call, where is the bottle? Essentia. It's very good. Excellent hydration. All right, so Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo. Now, we think she's an expert, right? She's got a title. She's the Commerce Secretary. She goes on live television from the DNC and says without a smirk on her face to this snowflake anchorette that she is not familiar with data generated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And she dismisses the data release as a lie because it also came out of Donald Trump's mouth. And she said, I've never heard him say anything that was true. And that was the end of the discussion on this downward revision. So we've been lied to about the growth of the economy. And by the way, very important to point out that these are not just frivolous jobs that didn't exist over the past year when we thought they did between April of 2023 and March of 2024. These were not just frivolous little jobs that didn't exist. They were misreporting an average of 68,000 jobs per month. Per month. The actual job growth was nearly 30% less than the initially reported 2.9 million job growth from 2023 April to 2024 March. And guess what, folks? Get a load of what was included in these numbers. The biggest downward revision came in professional and business services. You know, like the things that power the economy, small businesses, professional services. Job growth was 358,000 jobs less than they told us it was. Other areas where there was revised job growth included leisure and hospitality, manufacturing, and trade, transportation, and utilities. It's, you know, and you want to kind of laugh at it because I think we're always skeptical of these numbers because, you know, all these agencies that monitor these economic indicators, we used to rely on them. We assumed that they were legitimate and that they were telling us the truth. And now, with the passage of time, through all the years of Obama and now the third Obama term, the Biden-Harris regime, we're learning that they're all part of the same choir singing from the same deceptive, corrupt hymn book. That's a fact. I take no pleasure in saying that because what do we do when we've run out of any reliable entities to trust in our government? What do we do then? What kind of a country are we? Really? Now, folks, you thought it couldn't get any stranger than the DNC convention and Michelle Obama talking about how her parents taught her not to ever want too much prosperity as she gets ready to fly back to one of her mansions. I think there's one in Hawaii. There's one on Martha's Vineyard. That's, you know, like the size of a small subdivision, I think. If none of that's going to disturb you, listen to this. Have you ever heard of Sneha Nair? Now, that's not a communicable disease, and it's also not a product to keep your hair from frizzing out. Sneha Nair is a 2024 hire in the nuclear security wing of the Department of Energy. A Biden hire, Sneha Nair, who in a recent interview was very forthcoming about what motivates her in this job as the one of the nuclear security czarinas. She says that, I'm not making this up, first of all, there's a need to eradicate purported white supremacy in the nuclear field and a need to queer the nuclear weapons industry, queer it up, as part of a diversity, equity, and inclusion push she believes is essential for deterring threats to nuclear energy facilities. Queer theory. It's a theory. Ms. Nair says that queer theory informs the struggle for nuclear justice and disarmament. Queer theory helps to shift the perception of nuclear weapons as instruments for security by telling the hidden stories of displacement, illness, and trauma caused by their production and testing. So we've got somebody in our nuclear sphere here who's trying to dismantle our nuclear protection. That's exactly what she's saying. Nair believes that without a DEI agenda, the workforce of a nuclear security facility is at risk for becoming, quote, insider threats. By understanding DEI as a set of values critical to security, and therefore as an element of an effective nuclear security culture, stakeholders can explore how DEI can contribute to stronger security at nuclear facilities. She goes on. I don't know how the person interviewing her was keeping a straight face. She says considerable progress has been made in advancing DEI in the nuclear field, but the largest obstacle remains in ensuring that nuclear security practitioners understand how DEI can serve as a tool to strengthen nuclear security. Greater focus on the intersections, they love intersectionality, the intersections between nuclear security and DEI is essential. Diversifying the perspectives included in nuclear security decision-making can expand the definition of who or what constitutes a threat. And I wrap this up with this little gem. An example of this is the threat posed by some white supremacist groups to nuclear facilities. That threat may go undetected if a white majority workforce does not perceive ideological leanings as indicators of a relevant nuclear security threat. In other words, if you've got too many white people working in the nuclear security realm, they're not going to notice the white supremacist crazies who come in to take control of the arsenal. Oh, really? Okay. Does she realize that without white people, there would be no nuclear weapons? There would be no nuclear energy? There would be none of the upsides to the nuclear revolution, to all of the research and development? I guess not. And she's got a job at the Department of Energy. I'm not making it up. I wish I could. Let's go out the door. You know, we've all been sort of talking about this Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, Kamala's running mate, and what a goofball he is. He's also a Marxist, and he tries to tell you he's just an old high school football coach. He's just a regular Midwestern kind of guy. Well, he's turning Minnesota into Venezuela, okay? And I'm not making it up. Let's go through this rundown on our way out the door here. This is very instructive of what has happened under Governor Walz and the completely Democrat-controlled Minnesota state legislature just since last year bleeding into this year. These are some of the things that have passed that are now law in Minnesota. And again, I'm just going to go down this laundry list from hell, okay? Legislation to allow undocumented migrants to obtain driver's licenses, to protect broad access to abortions, to restore voting rights for felons. So let's see. I can either be an undocumented migrant with a driver's license, which will allow me to drive a car when I'm high or drunk, or to the polls to vote. Or if I'm a felon, I can line up with these guys and vote on election day as well. Legislation to increase state capital gains taxes on the rich. Capital gains taxes. You start taxing those, that disincentivizes investment big time. I guess that's the way you want it in the Soviet Union of the North up there in Minnesota. Legislation that establishes protections for trans patients seeking gender-affirming care and those who deliver it. My only regret is that Trans World Airlines went out of business. Wouldn't you like to see what their ad campaigns were like today? Trans World Airlines. Yeah, so they're protecting the transies who are seeking gender-affirming care. That's called genital mutilation, for those of you common sense people who may be wondering what's going on in Minnesota. Legislation providing an additional $300 million for local governments to fund police and public safety. Now, why did they need $300 million to fund the police? You know why? Because after George Floyd died of a drug overdose and the city caught on fire, because all the police forces had been defunded by the Marxist Democrats, in the subsequent years, they've woken up and realized, wow, things are pretty bad when we don't have enough law enforcement on our streets. Maybe we better go find $300 million and hire some more cops. I just wonder what kind of success they're having in hiring these cops, knowing how shackled these guys are trying to do their jobs. When can they draw a firearm? When can they arrest someone, especially if he's a person of color or Hispanic? What if he's an illegal immigrant? They might have to turn him in. They don't want to do that. Unbelievable. Two more of these little beauties. Legislation to establish a goal to move the state's utilities to 100% clean energy. Don't ask me what that is. By 2040. Clean energy means that unreliable sources of energy, so good luck being able to turn your lights on at night, heat your house when it's 20 below in Minnesota, those little inconveniences that the elites like Timmy Walls will never deal with. Last but not least, they have legalized recreational marijuana for adults in Minnesota. So they realize that you've got to be high to vote for any of this stuff. And they're hoping to God that a lot of really strung out high people go to the polls in the next couple of months to vote for Kamala Harris and Tubby Timmy Walls in Minnesota. I don't think that the polling is going to hold up very well to make that happen because of one thing that has happened earlier this week. Credible reporting that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will end his race as an independent for president, will drop out, and will potentially gather with Donald Trump on August 23rd in Greater Phoenix, Arizona, to make his announcement, to make it official that he's out, and he wants his voters to support the Trump J.D. Vance ticket. They're not just dropping out because he's running out of money, which he is. His campaign is in debt already. But they're dropping out because they simply don't want to see a Marxist Democrat Party ruling the White House and ruling this country. It's not the Democrat Party that RFK Jr.'s family was a part of and was the royal family of for generations. He knows that. He wants to get out. And let's just wait and see how this starts impacting these pollsters as 3 to 5 points of support move from RFK Jr. to Trump Vance. That's something that may help you get through the next couple of months. A little bit of good news as we say farewell to you from yet another Liberty podcast. We thank you as always for joining us, for listening. Please share this podcast with all your friends. Please subscribe. And we'll look forward to seeing you again next time right here, the Liberty Podcast.